All right, thanks for staying with us. You're watching What Now? We're staying on that developing story that has grabbed the attention of the world, and sort of a consternation of and flurry of response to this particular one, where over the weekend, particularly on Saturday, the U.S., in a special forces style, extracted the leader and the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and he will now be facing charges in the U.S. We're joined now by global affairs analyst Dr. Didi Ojo virtually. Good to have you join us.
It's my pleasure. Good afternoon, Precious.
So
congratulations on the award.
Oh, thank you very much. Dr. Joe, let's start with this very daring special forces raid to extract President Maduro. I just want to get your thought on it and how this sort of mirrors the action of the U.S. in Panama in 1989.
Very similar, Precious, very, very similar. 36 years ago, something happened when the U.S. forces actually stormed Panama and, smoked out Manuel Noriega. And history is reporting it. So, but it's not only in Panama that this has happened. It has also happened in Baghdad and in Iraq when the U.S. allied forces led the ouster of Saddam Hussein. You also have had similar story in Libya, where U.S. also led the ouster of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. So it keeps happening. The only country that U.S. has not succeeded in having a regime change was in Cuba. And now we are told Cuba is also on the line. Cuba, Colombia, they are on the line for similar treatment. And the world needs to rally and condemn in no uncertain terms that this is not democracy. This is, hegemony. This is quite antithetical to the democratic norms and ethos. And on top of it, U.S. is saying they are going to be running Venezuela for as long as it takes for them to stabilize the country. So who has appointed them? The foster father of Venezuela. More so when everybody knows the interest at stake here is the oil and natural resources of Venezuela, not so much about the sins of Nicolas Maduro and his wife.
And let me also add to the list that Mexico is also being threatened. We'll get to that in just a moment. But because you mentioned Libya, Iraq, and Cuba, Panama as well, does this sort of reveal a continuity in how the U.S. approaches issues around intervention, sovereignty, and legality in the Western Hemisphere?
Of course it does. And, that's why somebody on social media said what happened was a hegemonic, there is a word that I'm trying to remember now. Is it atmospheric hegemony or something? That U.S. is trying to consolidate its hold on the entire Western Hemisphere, and that we may have seen unwittingly a kind of tripartite calibration of the entire global hemisphere, with China, Russia, and US bifurcating or trifurcating the entire universe and carving out a sphere of influence for themselves in a manner that is reminiscent of what happened in 1884 during the Berlin conference in Germany, where Africa was divided among some superpowers. France having some countries, UK having some countries, Portugal having some countries, Spain having some countries. So we are back to that era. And unfortunately, this is happening in a time when people thought we are no longer in a unipolar world after the end of Cold War. But it seems like while there may not be essentially Cold War, we are back to era of hegemony, you know, hegemony of superpowers over the small and medium powers.
And it looks like the world, because again, we've talked so much about soft power and how important the US has that. China is also beginning to have that. And this war, for example, has also, the war between the Russia-Ukraine war, has also sort of ingrained into people's minds how important Russia is in the order of things. But I also wanted to talk about the military might, because no matter how much we talk about soft power, military might is perhaps also, if not more important. And in terms of, because the President Bola Tinubu some time ago in Brazil, I think that was last year, was talking about the restructuring of the global order, especially the global financial order. But how possible is that when some countries can get away with invading other countries compared to other countries that cannot?
President Tinubu was just saying what was on his mind. What he said does not carry any power. Has there been any retaliation against the US by any African country when US slammed tariff increase on almost all African countries? The least being about 20% tariff increase. Has there been any country in Africa that have been able to stand up to US to say we are also going to have a retaliatory tariff hike? It was only China, maybe Canada, which other country? Just very few countries that were able to slam a retaliatory tariff hike on US. And that tells you about the military power. All this talk about diplomacy, soft power does not count in the real sense, because unless you have the military might, you are just going to be like a pawn in the chessboard of the rest of the superpowers. And that is why how many countries have been able to checkmate US, with the exception of China and Russia, not even Japan, to the best of my knowledge, or even Germany, that was once one of the so-called military might of the past. The entire Europe has been quiet and silent, even about the invasion of Venezuela in 2026, for God's sake. It tells you that if you don't have military might, then you are just, whatever you say is just an hot air. And that's exactly what President Bola Tinubu said. Whatever they said at the UN General Assembly, whatever he said at BRICS Committee, whatever he said at the what's it one that they do at Davos, Economic Summit in Davos, the climate change meetings, whatever you say there is just, you have saying it to yourself. Look at what US did against South Africa. Refused to attend the G20 meeting, not even with any representation. And he said that none of the agreements reached at that G20 meeting will be honored by the US. US, for the benefit of our viewers, is not even a member of the International Criminal Court, nor did they sign up to Rome Statute. Yet you see this scandalous, impunity with which US is doing its own thing across the globe. And nobody has been able to call it to order. Someone was saying, oh, let the United Nations rein in me. How can UN? What can UN do? Did you listen to the speech
and
of
Dr.
Donald
Joe,
Trump?
there is a meeting, I think there is a meeting of the United Nations Security Council sometime this week. We'll get to that if time permits, but I wanted to get back to Venezuela and just talk about how, because we have to properly situate the matter and balance it, as much as we're talking about the sovereignty of a nation, but we're also talking about a country that has a history of contested domestic politics, and then the very checkered record of the Maduro regime. So just speak to us about how the international, how they have maybe blurred the lines of, I'm looking for the right word to use, just that blurred lines of law enforcement and war, and then the idea that regime change can be recast simply as an arrest. I just wanted to speak to that.
Well, I'm trying to get the context of your question. I
So
really
let me simplify it. You had talked about how this is a violation of international law, but I'm also saying let's also put into context the character of the person we're talking about, Nicolas Maduro, and then speak to, because it's like being in between the rock and a hard place where there is law enforcement because there is drug trafficking, but there is also the sovereignty of a nation. Just sort of speak to that bloodline.
Okay, now I got your point. The issue is this: nobody is saying that Maduro may not have committed some of those atrocities. Is alleged to be a drug cartel leader. There's allegation of narco-terrorism financing. That he has opened the gates of his prisons to allow Venezuelans to, besiege the U.S. That there are about 8 million Venezuelans that are living illegally in U.S. Yes, this may be true, and I'm not going to hold brief for him. But can you be a judge in your own case? Assuming without considering that U.S. were to be a member of the International Criminal Court, the appropriate place to have this will have been the ICC at The Hague, where there will be an impartial panel of jurists to examine, because all these allegations have been debunked by the Maduro government, Nicolas Maduro himself. And you see, it's very convenient to call a dog a bad name in order to hang it. Someone was saying on social media that the Honduran president, who was also fingered to be involved in drug cartel, was recently given pardon by the U.S. So how do you juxtapose the two? Nobody is saying that Maduro came into power in 2013. Before him was Hugo Chavez, who anointed Maduro as his successor as a death wish. And it's been there, yes, the economy has dipped, the fuel prices, the price of crude oil has dipped in the international market, so he could not fund this obligation, and there are economic crises. But it's not only in Venezuela that you have economic crisis. There are economic crises all over the world, including in US and UK. You've seen protests, people protesting and all of that. And then you've seen also, if US is actually sincere with what they are alleging against Maduro. There was an election in July 2024, remember, Precious, and Edmundo Gonzalez won that election after the disqualification of Muchada, I guess. It was said that Edmundo Gonzalez won about 68% of that vote. Why didn't US say, okay, Gonzalez, go and take over? You are the legitimate winner of that, and run the government with the support and assistance of US. But now US want to run Venezuela like a colony, a kind of protectorate. And that is what is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
And interesting you make that point, because Dr. Joe, I remember that President Trump was also asked, the lady who won the Nobel Prize for Peace, or the Nobel Peace Prize, Marina, he was asked whether he would support her, to take over, because she was, had to be on exile when Gonzalo ran that election, and he said she doesn't have the support on the ground. But the vice president is now to be sworn in as president, and President Trump has already started threatening her, saying that if she doesn't cooperate with him and his administration, it could be worse for her than it was for Maduro. I'm just wondering what her options are, and then how easy it would also be for the U.S. president to work with a post-Maduro government, still very full of ideological enemies.
Well, unfortunately, the Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president of Venezuela, has very no choice at all if she wants to live with her life, because we should not forget, Precious, that lives were lost on Saturday. About 80 people, according to New York Times, have so far been said to have been murdered in that bloody attack on Caracas. And so if Delcy Rodriguez is intransigent and insisted that it's only Maduro or nothing, she will be given similar treatment. Don't forget that Trump also said in media chat on Saturday that there might be another wave of attack on Caracas if they didn't achieve their objective. So she has to, Delcy Rodriguez may have to play it cool to save her neck and that of her brother Georgie, who is the head of the National Assembly of Venezuela. Otherwise, she may die in the process, or she may be humiliated out of office, and knowing full well that whatever America wants, America gets. It's very easy to just rope her in under the guise that she's also an accomplice to the Nicolas Maduro's infamy. And that will just be it. The rest will continue to condemn and mourn and castigate. But Trump will still get what he wants. So the point is that Donald Trump has not left anybody in doubt about his mission to Caracas or his mission to Venezuela. That is about the economy, not entirely to promote democracy, not entirely to promote good governance, but to explore. Don't forget, I don't think I've mentioned this here, that Venezuela has the largest oil deposit in the world. And that is the main attraction. Aside from the natural resources, iron ore, and some other natural resources that Venezuela has. So this may have been the main attraction and the real reason why Donald Trump is in Venezuela rather than to promote democracy or to deal with issues of drug trafficking and narco financing. The point is, let's stay with Delcy Rodriguez. Needs to rethink. It's better to be safe than to be sorry. If she refused to be inaugurated as the president, and not just that, but also fully cooperate with the U.S. government, she may find herself on the wrong side of the U.S. government. The wrath of America could be visited on her and her family. And not just that, even the military chiefs, those who survived this last Saturday's attack, may go in for it because Donald Trump has bullied everybody and has left a very certain message that there could be another wave of attack on Caracas and
Dr. Ojo, there is just a lot to look at here. Again, I wish we could have talked about the United Nations Security Council meeting, but we can't talk about that. But what's interesting is that President Trump himself was once opposed to American adventurism. He criticized the U.S. for invading Iraq, but I mean, see where we are now. But we have to leave it here. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Global Affairs Analyst, Dr. Jide Ojo.
It's my pleasure, Precious. Have a great year ahead. Keep safe and stay blessed.
All right, that's What Now. For more international stories that we're monitoring, you can visit our website. It's www.tvcnews.tv. You can also follow us on our social media handles. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and on X at TVC News NG. We also have updates for